When the Christian fundamentalist apologists debate, are they really bringing forth evidence that back their beliefs, or are they simply creating truths out of thin air? Stay tuned and you'll see why the Christian fundamentalist apologist talking points shouldn't be taken seriously at all. Have you ever observed a debate with a Christian fundamentalist apologist who is defending the legitimacy of the New Testament and sometimes even the Old Testament? Usually the opposing side is the friendly atheist down the block, the Matt Dillahunties, the Sam Harrises, the late Christopher Hitchens, in which the atheists generally use the same tactics. You see, the atheist isn't trying to prove the non-existence of God, he's simply saying there isn't evidence to prove he does exist. His contention isn't offering solid proof that Christ didn't rise from the dead, or that the Gospels aren't true. He's simply stating that there isn't any evidence to prove that the happenings of Christ did occur, including the resurrection. And he's saying that there isn't any evidence to prove that the Gospels are legitimate. It's a very simple platform for debate that the atheist uses. It'd be much like if a person came up to me and claimed that he could lift an automobile over his head. I'm not going to believe him, because the evidence we have thus far states a human man cannot lift an automobile over his head. I'm not saying that he didn't. I'm saying he has no evidence that he could have. And that is what the atheist is telling the Christian fundamentalist apologist. When the atheist states that there's no clear, concrete proof for the story of Genesis occurring, and not only that, all the genres of science say it couldn't possibly happen like the Bible says, he is stating facts. We know for a fact the world is not 5,000 to 6,000 years old. We know for a fact the concept of a great flood myth is a complete implausibility. When the atheist states that there's no record of any witness actually seeing Christ after he was supposedly crucified, this is also a fact. All the writings portraying this occurred much later after his death. And no, this is not the atheist's opinion, this is a fact. When the atheist claims we have no authorship of any of the Gospels, it's because we have no authorship of any of the Gospels. Again, not his conjecture, not his opinion, not his hypothesis. As of now, we have no authorship of the Gospels. But the Christian fundamentalist apologist does not debate in this manner. For the object of a debate is to present your best evidence to support your position in order to convince that you are correct in your assessment. And the Christian fundamentalist apologist does not use evidence. He creates truths. Note I stated he doesn't say truths, he creates them. And if you watch one of these debates, you will see one of 5 ways, or perhaps all 5, in which an apologist will create a truth out of thin air. Well, the first way they do it is they create truths from junk science, and this is usually concerning the Old Testament, especially Genesis. The common origin being the Institute for Creation Research, which does everything except the proper research part. Let's take John Baumgartner's example of runaway subduction. His attempt to explain that the continents drifted across the earth in a mere 40 days, explaining why all the animals prior to the flood would have been on the same landmass and able to enter the ark. This concept is not real science, it's junk science. His own findings show that if that had happened the way he describes, the heat produced would have boiled the oceans. It certainly has not been accepted in peer review. It is not part of mainstream science, and absolutely no one believes it except zealot scientists who are linked with fundamentalist churches. They will take a theory of theirs, completely ignore scientific method and repetitive research and peer review testing, but yet claim the results are fact, as you will see with many articles from the Institute of Creation Research. Or the second way they create truths largely mimics the first, when one of their apologists makes a so-called discovery that isn't verified by anyone except other fundamentalists, and claims that that discovery proves the factual context of the Bible. Ron Wyatt does this with his so-called discovery of the chariot wheel at the bottom of the Red Sea, the wheel that has not been verified by any archaeologists, and no conclusive confirmation of where it came from, but yet somehow proves that the Pharaoh's army was swallowed by the parted sea while chasing the ancient Hebrews. Much like the photographs that they took in underwater scuba diving expeditions of coral formations that look like wheels, and immediately create a truth that they are the wheels of the ancient chariots buried by the waters of God's wrath. Never mind that many corals naturally grow to look like wheels with spokes on them. They have created their truth out of discovery, and their truth must be fact because they say so. And the third way that the fundamentalist apologist debater will create a truth is confirming their speculation as fact, and usually is poor speculation. An example, when William Lane Craig was confronted in a New York Times article about the word in Isaiah 7:14 of virgin relating to the prophecy of the virgin birth of Jesus, in which the word actually meant young woman, William Lane Craig made the grand speculation of pointing to Matthew 1:23. Matthew 1:23 proclaimed that the virgin birth prophecy occurred, therefore Isaiah 7:14 meant virgin in the word. Or, as Bruce Metzger proclaimed, the New Testament Gospels must be true because there was so much volume of the manuscripts being produced in the time. Never mind that the very first manuscripts were produced well after Christ's death. Their speculation is their fact. And the fourth way the debater will create a truth is by taking a confirmed truth and then using that to springboard to create a second one. Pastor Wendell with the Associates for Biblical Research does this, as I covered in previous videos, concerning the legitimacy of Abraham's existence. He shows that there was a city named Ur in the ancient Hebrew Bible, and then that city actually existed, therefore Abraham must have existed as well. And as I said in that video, that is like me writing a fictional book that is centered around the city of Chicago, and 1,000 years from now someone finds that book, notes that the city of Chicago did exist, so somehow assumes that my fictional character existed as well. That is using a truth to create another truth, and the Christian fundamentalist apologist does this all the time. And if you watch these debates from beginning to end, you will see them do this repeatedly. And the last way that they use to create truths is by using other created truths from other fundamentalists. Lee Strobel is guilty of this all over the place. Of course, his book, The Case for Christ, seems to make sense, proving the legitimacy of the New Testament. The vast majority of his interviewees were fundamentalists. And if you look at most of the reference books that he claims he used to confirm this research, they were written by the same fundamentalists as well. Or you could look at a debate that involved Mike Licona, another Christian fundamentalist apologist. His basic opening remarks of the debate, to first initially prove the existence of God, was a story from one of his church members who claimed when she was in high school, they were messing around with a Ouija board and the lid of a trash can rose up in the air. And it must be true because it came from an eyewitness account of one of those church members. Or how many times have you heard Christian fundamentalist apologists claim that they knew people who were spontaneously healed, but yet there's no evidence to confirm this? How they all have eyewitness accounts of each other speaking in tongues. Of course they do, they all belong to the same cult. So no, Christian fundamentalists, this is why I don't take you seriously in the debate forum, because I have just listed 5 ways that you commonly use in debates to attempt to create truths out of thin air that are not legitimate. And the people in the stands who are applauding the fundamentalist apologists during the debates, they are always from fundamentalist churches. They are always your fellow fundamentalists. You can't accuse the atheists of using these tactics. The atheist simply presents the lack of evidence that clearly shows we can't prove that the New Testament is legitimate. And they present actual hard evidence, not opinion, mind you, completely disproving Genesis. Now, the Christian fundamentalist gets upset when I call him a cult member. Well, you know what, evangelical? When you stop engaging in this sort of debate fallacy, when you start using reason instead of anti-reason, rationality instead of irrationality, and when you actually start using evidence instead of a plethora of created truths, only then will you get something from me besides this constant ridicule. And if you'd like to embark on a tale of a complete untruth, check out my novel The Second Fall, an offbeat apocalypse sure to offend the fundamentalist. On Amazon, see the link in the vid description as well as the banner, and I will see you next time as we once again take that sword of reason and reality and thrust it right through the heart of ignorance.